Amateur Traveler is in its 20th year now, but can you imagine if I had people on the show who had never been to the destination, but had just read about it or seen a movie about it? That wouldn't make any sense at all, and you wouldn't listen. We all know how important it is to receive advice from people who know a destination to get the most authentic local experience. And a great option for experiencing this is Explore Worldwide and their authentic small group adventures, led by local tour leaders, perfect for solo travelers who want to meet like minded people with a desire for adventure. I'm often an independent traveler, but two of my last three trips were with small group tours because they organize everything and it's a lot easier. If you want to recreate the tour I did to Malta, they have a Malta and Gozo Discovery Tour. I'm intrigued by one of their tours called A Taste of Sicily. The company again is Explore Worldwide, and visit exploreworldwide.com to learn more. And thanks to Explore Worldwide for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler. The nights are long, the days are short, and the weather is chilly to downright cold, depending on where you are. It's a good time to slip into a Quince iconic Mongolian cashmere sweaters, which start at only $50. You can treat yourself to everyday luxury at an affordable price with Quince. If you really want to dive into luxury, you can check out their leather handbags, washable silk shirts, and European linen sheet sets. Whatever you're looking for at Quince, all the prices are 50 to 80% less than similar brands, and they do that by partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the middleman. They only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing processes. And of course, they use premium fabrics and finishes for that luxury feel in every piece. But you've already heard me rave about my Quince travel pants. Treat yourself this winter without the luxury price tag. Go to quince.com/traveler for 365-day returns plus free shipping on your order. That's QUINCE.com/traveler to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/traveler. And thanks to Quince for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler.
Got my bags packed, I'm on a roll. I'm heading out there, and I'm ready to go. I'm looking real good in my passport photo. Oh, no.
Amateur Traveler, episode 358. Today, the Amateur Traveler goes to a thriving remote city with white sand beaches and a wine region as we go to Perth, Australia.
More cathedral, I got to sit in one more cafe. I know that I should be heading home, but maybe not today.
Welcome to the Amateur Traveler. I'm your host, Chris Christensen. Before we get into this week's interview, I do have three news stories for you. In the first one, don't try this at home. A hiker who was late getting back to his car set off an emergency beacon. The New Zealand government dispatched a rescue helicopter, but they're probably going to send him the bill. You may know that some hoteliers have a love-hate relationship with TripAdvisor because it can be a great source of guests, but also some guests have been known to blackmail a hotel. Do this or I will give you a bad review. TripAdvisor now launched a way that the hotel can report when someone does that. And then if you're looking for incentive to travel, the U.S. Travel Association released a survey that found that couples who travel together have better relationships and better sex than those who don't. For links to all three of those stories, check out the show notes at amateurtraveler.com. I'd like to welcome to the show Carmen from doublebarreltravel.com, and Carmen has come to talk to us about Perth, Australia. Carmen, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
We actually had quite a few requests, more requests for more shows about Australia recently, and this is the second one we've had in a month, so it just shows that we do listen. Carmen, you live in Perth.
Not at the moment. I actually live in London, but I grew up in Perth and lived there for 21 years, so I know it quite well.
Okay. And when we say Perth, let's put it on a map, first of all.
Yes, it's very isolated. I think it's the second most isolated city after Honolulu.
When we say it's isolated, it's way at the western edge of Australia.
Yes, far west, sort of south. It's actually on the opposite side of Australia to Sydney, if you can imagine where Sydney is.
Okay. And why should someone go to Perth?
I think it's really good because of its isolation in the sense that there's not so many tourists. And one of the advantages of Perth is that it wasn't really hit by the recession. So it's still quite a boom town. And so there's a lot going on and a lot of things to do and see. And it's also quite a beautiful place. There's beautiful beaches and it's a very diverse. If you look at the state as a whole, it's so diverse. I mean, at the top, you've got deserts and coral reefs. And then at the bottom, you've got great large bushland with amazing trees, very old and tall trees, and you can go bushwalking, amazing beaches and a really good wine region. The climate sort of south of Perth is similar to California. So they've got beautiful vineyards and it's a really good sort of wine country as well.
And when we say bushwalking, we're just saying any walking outdoors in the woods.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Just we need to define our terms here. And I think of the tourist who's supposed to have come to the U.S. and didn't understand the scale of the country and said they wanted to see both the Grand Canyon in New York and they didn't know if it was better to do the Grand Canyon in the morning and the New York in the afternoon or the other way around. And the similar thing is we try to do Sydney and Perth. We're not doing them on the same day. We're flying across a continent to see it.
Yeah. It's about I think about 5 hours in a plane. And I've had a similar experience. Some of my friends have said, oh, yeah, we'll come to Perth and then we'll drive across to Sydney. And I've said, you do realize that would take more than a week to drive there. And then they say, oh, really? You didn't realize it was so far. But yes, it's a very big country. And in terms of just the state itself, I mean, from Perth, if you want to get up to Coral Bay, which is a really beautiful reef, it's about a 12.5 hour drive. But if you want to experience sort of the wine region, that's only about 3 to 4 hour drive south. So that's quite close in terms of driving around Western Australia.
Okay. And let's say I had a week to spend in Perth and in day trips outside of Perth. How would you recommend I spend my time?
I would recommend you go to Rottnest, which is an island off the coast of Perth. It's about an hour or so on the ferry, and it's a beautiful island. There's no cars allowed on the island, and the main mode of transport is bicycle. So everyone rides their bikes around the island, and there's lots of really nice secluded bays and beautiful places to snorkel and take in the best bits of nature. And if you're a fan of scuba diving, there's some great shipwrecks off the coast of Rottnest that you can explore as well. So that's quite interesting. I would recommend sort of going down to the wine region for a couple of days as well if you've got the time and experiencing that. The food down there is really delicious. A lot of the wineries have restaurants attached to them, and a lot of these restaurants are known for their food being just as good as the wine. So really good experience down there. There's also a chocolate factory. And if you don't have time to nip down there, there's a chocolate factory, sort of its sister factory out in the Swan Valley, which is another wine region, which is a lot closer to Perth. It's probably 45 minutes east of Perth. So you can go there for the day and it's similar sort of wineries and really nice food and great place to experience.
Any winery in either location that you would recommend? A must-see?
Yeah, in the wine region south of Perth, I would recommend going to Flute's Winery. It's really nice and the food is absolutely delicious. But if you don't have time for a meal, there's a little winery called Brown Hill and they do amazing wines. But you can taste them sort of out the back of their shed warehouse.
And I don't know
back.
what kind of wines. When I think of Australia, I think of Shiraz, but I don't know what kind of wine we're making in that area.
There's a whole range, actually. It's actually quite nice, the sort of lighter reds as well. So not Shiraz, but more your sort of light reds. The white wines are quite nice too, but probably I would say the reds are better than the whites. But yeah, Brown Hill has some delicious wines. That's my dad's favourite vineyard. But they don't have a restaurant, but it's really good. And in terms of east of Perth, in the Swan Valley, there's Lamont's Winery, which is really nice. And also a winery called Sounderford, which has really nice food as well. And they often do concerts in the grounds of the winery. So that can be quite fun as well.
And my impression is that like the wineries near me here in California, that it's fairly easy to go in and get a tour or a wine tasting or something like that.
Yeah, that's the case. A lot of these wineries also have art galleries attached to them. So you can make quite a day of it, sort of driving around looking at the art galleries. And they also do tours, of course, so you don't drink and drive. And they can drive you around in a little bus. So if you've got a group of you, that might be a really good option as well. And also south of Perth as well, it's quite well known for its music. They have a lot of music festivals. So if you're there in the summer, there's music festivals for all sorts of ages. There's a blues festival in Bridgetown, which is about 3 hours south of Perth in sort of a foresty area. Then there's Southbound, which is more for like 20-year-olds. They have like the latest bands like Kings of Leon went there a couple of years ago. You've also got Lewin Estate, which puts on a concert every year, and you have probably more for the oldies, those concerts, but they've got bands like Sting and other music groups. So,
I have
I
a
mean, I
feeling
really
I
like
just
Sting,
qualified
but
for your oldies category there. Okay. I was thinking my parents' generation, but no, we were going to my generation. Okay. Where would we go next?
if you want to sort of explore Perth itself, there's quite a lot of things to do and see. The foreshore is being developed at the moment, so that's right on the river. The city is beautiful in the sense that it's right on the river, and there's quite a few restaurants you can go to on the river, like Matilda Bay, which sort of make the most of that scenery. And then there's also Kings Park, which is a park on the top of a hill overlooking the city. And I would really recommend you go there and spend a good few hours there. It's a huge park, so you can spend a lot of time walking around, and it's really good if you've got children as well. They've got lots of really nice playgrounds, and the view from the top of the park is absolutely spectacular. You often see a lot of wedding groups going up there to get their photos done because you can see the beautiful skyline of the city and the river, and it's really picturesque from there. I noticed a couple of years back when I went back, they've opened a lot of really nice rooftop bars now, so you can enjoy some of those in the city. And the city's sort of turned into a hub of activity. I mean, a few years ago, I've been living in London now for 4 years, and when I left Perth, the city was often very quiet on the weekends. But when I went back last year, I noticed that it's a lot more lively on the weekends, and there's a lot of good music venues and rooftop bars that you can experience. So it's obviously not as lively as Sydney, but it's certainly with the mining boom getting a lot more popular.
Now, you mentioned rooftop bars, and that leads me to the question of weather. When's the best time to visit Perth?
I would say in autumn or spring because it's not too warm. In summer, it can get really hot. I think Christmas Day last year, 2012, 2013, it was 41 degrees, so it can get very
Okay.
hot in the middle of summer.
That's quite hot. That's over 100 for those of you thinking Fahrenheit. Okay.
Yeah, it's very warm, but it's quite a dry heat. It's not humid. It comes from the desert, so it's not too unbearable. But I mean, if you're not used to hot weather, that would probably be not very nice. So I would recommend going in sort of September, October, November times, and March, April as well. It's normally quite nice. It doesn't rain very much, so even if you were to go in sort of June, July, August, it would be a bit too cold for the beach, but it wouldn't be rainy that much, hopefully.
And we've talked seasons.
So
Do you have a favorite day of the year in Perth?
I really like Australia Day.
Okay. And Australia Day is in your winter, our summer.
No, it's in our summer on the 26th of January.
January. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Your summer, our winter. Okay.
So everyone gets a day off work, and we normally have a barbecue. And in Perth, they have fireworks on the river. So I guess it's like your 4th of July celebrations in that sense. And a lot of people go down to the foreshore to watch the fireworks, and it's quite a party atmosphere. So yeah, that would probably be my favorite day. And also Christmas Day. I mean, it's very different from the traditional Christmas, I suppose, because it's so warm. And my family and I, we normally celebrate it on Christmas Eve, so we can have a dinner while it's not too hot. Yeah, so it's quite a different experience in the sense that we don't eat turkey, we have seafood. It's too hot for turkey. And then on Christmas Day, we normally spend that down at the beach having a champagne brunch. So it's quite a different experience to London. I mean, this Christmas I spent it in Cornwall in England, and it was beautiful, but it rained the entire time.
So you have a white Christmas. It's just a white sand beach Christmas.
Exactly. It's a white sandy beach Christmas, which a lot of my English friends can't really get their heads around. But I've got to say, I think I prefer it. It's very laid back, and it's nice to get outdoors, especially when you have to spend a lot of time with your family. It's good to be able to go for a long walk.
And what else should we see in Perth itself?
There's quite a lot of things to do in terms of the art scene. I mean, music is a really big thing. A lot of really good bands have come out of Perth, considering its population. And I think that's probably because we're so isolated. So we're not that influenced by other sort of local music because there is no other local music. So it's really good if you go to try and go to a local venue like the Rosemount, which is one of the venues, or the Bakery, which is another venue, which is in Northbridge, which is where the sort of nightclub area is, and experience sort of like an original music live show. I'd really recommend that. I would also recommend eating out because the food in Perth is really delicious, and there's a really nice place called Hillary's Boat Harbour, and that's sort of on a harbour, and they've got really nice restaurants on boardwalks, and you can sort of eat sitting out over the sea. And there's a really nice restaurant there called Spinnaker's, which is made out of glass, so it almost feels as though you're floating as you eat your meal, looking out over the ocean. It's really beautiful.
And seafood, I'm assuming.
Yeah, there's lots of seafood there. It's really nice, fresh seafood.
And is there any particular type of seafood that Perth is known for?
Yeah, so Perth is really well known for its seafood, and some of the best seafood are our mussels. And there's a restaurant called the Mussel Bar, which is in Fremantle, which is about half an hour south of Perth, and it's the oldest port in Western Australia. And it's quite a nice town. It's got sort of a hippie feel to it, I suppose. It's very old. It's one of the oldest parts of the Perth area, and it's got a lot of charm. There's markets there where you can buy fresh produce, and there's also market stalls where you can buy original artworks and art pieces. So it's a great place to go if you're looking for a special gift to pick up for someone. And there's a lot of really nice restaurants in the area, like the Mussel Bar, and it's a great place to go if you want to eat fish and chips in the port and experience that as well.
Excellent. You mentioned something about the boom in mining, and I'm not sure that everybody has heard about what's going on in Western Australia.
Okay, well, basically, the land in Western Australia has a lot of really rich minerals and resources that China are really keen on getting their hands on, such as iron ore. So over the past sort of 10 years, more so in the past 5 years, we've been doing a lot of trade with China, and as a result, a lot of people have been moving to Western Australia and moving to Perth, and a lot of people are sort of fly in, fly out. So that means they go out to the mine, might work there for 2 weeks, and then they fly back to Perth for 1 week. And as a result, if our state was a country on its own, so if Western Australia was its own country, we would have the highest median income in the world. So there's a lot of people who are earning a lot of money in the state. And as a side effect, I've seen it really rub off on the town. There's been a lot of new infrastructure. There's been a lot of really big houses being built around the town. But one of the unfortunate things of the mining boom I've found is that prices have risen. So if you go out to eat a meal or even to see a show or something like that, it's a lot more expensive than it was previously.
Okay. Excellent. Anything else we should see in Perth?
I would recommend having a day out in the city as well. It's really good in terms of shopping. There's quite a few really nice boutiques, and also a really good area is called Claremont, which is about a 5 to 10 minute drive outside of the city, and Subiaco, which is on the way to Claremont. And there's lots of boutique shopping, so probably more one for the ladies, but Subiaco is a really nice old part of the city, and they've got really nice sort of streets with big trees overhanging the houses. It's quite picturesque if you want to have a walk around that area of town. There's some really nice restaurants again, and it's quite charming because it's got some of the oldest buildings in Perth, sort of in the Subiaco area. So that I would recommend going there, and to Claremont as well, where there's some really nice boutique shopping, although it is quite expensive.
What's going to surprise me about Perth?
I think you would find it quite surprising in the sense that even though there's not many people, it's quite a sprawling city. So I think it's a bit like LA in the sense that there's houses for miles and miles and miles, and we don't tend to live on top of each other. So the suburbs go for 1 hour north and 1 hour south, even though there's not actually that many people in the city. So I would advise if you go there, you definitely would need a car to get around. The public transport isn't very efficient. There's only trains every half hour or every hour. So car would be the best form of transport. And if you do have a car, one other thing I would recommend doing is going up. Joondalup is about half an hour north of Perth, and about another half an hour north of there is a national park called Yanchep. And if you want to see some of the wildlife of Australia, I'd really recommend going there. They've got kangaroos, and even though koalas aren't native to Western Australia, they've got some koalas there, so you can have a chance to have a look at those. They're really sweet, and it's a really nice park to walk around. It's very large, a lot of bushland, and it's got a big lake in the middle, so it's quite picturesque. And there's also some caves in the national park, so you can go into the caves as well, which is quite an experience. And if you have the chance to go down south as well, to visit the wine region, there's also a lot of caves around there which are spectacular. I think it's got one of the deepest caves in the world is there, and you can go down there for a few hours, which is a bit creepy, but it's also beautiful. They've lit it up in such a way that it's almost sort of like a cathedral atmosphere. The ceiling is very, very high, and the acoustics are a bit like a cathedral, so it's quite spectacular.
Tourists come to Perth and they go to one place and you think, I don't know why they waste their time going there.
I would have to say that would be, for me, the bell tower. It's a really strange, it's quite beautiful to look at from the outside, but I don't know why people would pay $20 to go up the bell tower. Originally, when the plans were suggested, a lot of the locals kicked off about building this tower because they thought that the money could be better spent elsewhere. And as a result, they halved the size of the bell tower. So now it's, well, when it was built, it didn't really look as spectacular as it could have, I think, and it's not very large. And I just think, why would you? I mean, I don't think it's a great place to visit. There's a lot of other places. I mean, certainly if you're after the view, I wouldn't recommend going up the bell tower. Instead, go to Kings Park, because the view from the top of Kings Park is spectacular, and it's free to get into Kings Park rather than pay $20 to walk up a bell tower.
Okay. And then on the other side, I can't really consider that I've gone to Perth or to Western Australia if I haven't done what?
You definitely need to visit the beach. The beaches in Perth and in Western Australia are beautiful. I've been to beaches where there's been absolutely no one there. So there's not many people. So you can almost always, well, depends where you go in WA, but a lot of the time you can have the beach to yourself. And I've been on beaches so clean that the sand has squeaked under my feet, literally squeaked. It's so white that it's blinding, the sand, and it's beautiful. And there's also really nice places to snorkel and scuba dive. So if you like your water sports, you've definitely come to the right place, because it's a great place to sort of hire out a boat as well for the day and go out to Rottnest Island and experience the beaches, or even just from Perth. The beaches are beautiful.
And your favorite snorkel spot?
There's a little bay called Waterman's Bay, which is sort of south of Trigg Beach, which is about 10 or 15 minutes from the city. And it's really nice. There's a lot of reef there. So if you're looking to snorkel, I'd really recommend going to Waterman's Bay. It's also very secluded, so there's not much or any waves really. So it's a perfect, ideal place to snorkel.
Okay. Picture that you're standing in the prettiest spot around Perth. Where are you standing and what are you looking at?
There's a very nice restaurant. It's actually where I had my wedding reception, called The Boat Shed. And it's on the opposite side of the river to the city. And they've built the restaurant right on the foreshore. And there's no other buildings there at all. It's the sole restaurant there. And the view from the restaurant is beautiful. It's breathtaking, especially in the evening if you go for dinner, because you can see the city lit up in lights. And the lights are bouncing off the river, and it's really a spectacular view. So I would recommend having a meal there. The food is also very, very delicious, and the wine. So that's an added bonus. It's a really nice restaurant, and it has a spectacular view.
Excellent. Before I get to my last three questions, anything else we should know before we head to Perth?
I think you just need to be aware that it's expensive. You can pay $10 for a pint of beer, so it's quite expensive. And the food as well isn't cheap. So I would just be aware about that. And also know that you would need a car to get around. You need to know that as well. So put some money aside to hire a car too. In terms of accommodation, there's not that many bed and breakfasts in Perth Centre, so you would probably be looking at staying in a hotel as well. And if you don't have transportation, I would recommend staying in the city because it's a good base to get a train in any direction from. So I'd recommend going there. In terms of the sort of people you can expect, people in Perth are really friendly. I don't know if it's because the sun always seems to shine, but everyone's very welcoming and friendly. And if you get lost or something, I'm sure someone will be willing to help you find your way. So you can expect to find a lot of friendly people.
Okay. Any tips in terms of money saving if we're talking about a place that can be expensive? Any place that you can get a $9 pint of beer or a little less for the food?
The sort of touristy spots, you can expect to pay more.
Sure.
But if you go to, for example, Yanchep, rather than eating in the national park, maybe drive back into Joondalup, which is half an hour drive south. And they've got some really nice Asian restaurants there, which are a lot cheaper. And you could grab a meal there that will often save you quite a lot of money. And if you do manage to sort of stay in a backpackers, I would recommend doing that if you're out for backpacker accommodation, because they often have kitchens, so you could subsidize some meals by cooking in the kitchen instead rather than eating out. I would also recommend, if you're sort of visiting a winery or something like that, you might consider investing in an entertainment book, which is, I think you pay $50 for the book, but they have lots and lots of different vouchers in the book. And you can use these to get discounts at wineries and other restaurants, even accommodation and hotels. And they often give you 20 to sort of 40% off. So it's quite useful if you can manage to purchase one of those books, because in the long term, if you're going for, say, 2 weeks or more, you could probably save quite a bit of money using those vouchers.
Excellent. Last 3 questions.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that makes you laugh and say only in Perth.
Going to the shopping centre and seeing people walking around barefoot. I once had a friend who was like, he couldn't believe that he'd been told that he couldn't come in to watch a movie at the cinema because he didn't have shoes on. So as you can gather from that, it's a very laid back city and people wouldn't think twice about not wearing shoes to leave the house.
So we just recorded an episode about Samoa, and we were told that if you leave the beach, you should put on your cover-up and you should dress modestly. Perth, not so much.
No, definitely not. I mean, if you go to some of the music festivals, you could probably see a lot of women walking around in bikinis, and that's not even at the beach. So definitely not a place where they're really concerned about covering up.
Finish this sentence for me. You really know you're in Perth when what?
When you're eating a really good meal outside and the sun is shining, because it always is in Perth just about, and also having a barbecue. I mean, you could probably go 320 days of the year where you just ate barbecue because the climate is perfectly suited for that. And it's one of the things I really miss is eating outdoors, because a lot of, even in restaurants, they have al frescoes and you often eat outdoors, which is a really nice way to appreciate the weather.
Excellent. And if you had to summarize Perth in 3 words, what 3 words would you use?
Relaxed, friendly, and beautiful.
Excellent. Carmen, thank you so much for coming on the show. Where can people read more about your travels?
They visit our blog, which is www.double-barrelledtravel.com. I write that blog with myself and my husband, Dave. We write that together. And also we focus a lot on video content. So if you're interested in having a look at a few videos, we recently posted one about our trip to Cornwall, so you can catch that there.
And why double-barreled?
Our surname, when we got married, my name would have died out if I'd given up my name for Dave. And he suggested that we change both our names and join them and double barrel our names. So we did that. So we're now Alan Patali. My maiden name was Alan and his former name was Patali. So now we're Alan Patali. And yeah, so that's where double-barreled travel comes from. It's got nothing to do with shotguns.
Okay. Carmen, thanks so much for coming on The Amateur Traveler and telling us
Thank you
your
for having
love for
me.
Perth.
Thank you. Cheers.
In news of the community, I heard from David this week, who commented on last week's episode, Travel to Samoa, episode 357. And David said, in part, listening to the latest podcast on Samoa brought back great memories of a trip I took to Samoa and American Samoa 15 years ago. You get a real sense of Polynesia culture in Samoa. The people there are some of the most hospitable you'll find, and I'm from the southern U.S., so that says a lot. The Samoan people will very likely either ask you to join them for dinner or visit a church event, as every community is centered around the church. Jade did a great job of describing the friendliness of the people, their deep Christian faith, and some of the interesting things to see, but she did leave out a couple of sites that I thoroughly enjoyed. One was Vailima, the home of Robert Louis Stevenson, where he lived out the later part of his life. In fact, his grave is actually on the property. While there, you can see how he and his family lived and view some of the artifacts from his life. A couple of other fun excursions on the islands of Savaii are the rainforest canopy tour and the massive blowholes along the coast. And then David goes on to talk about American Samoa, which he liked even better, and I'll let you read that comment for yourself. Reaching way back in the archive, I got a comment on Travel to Puerto Rico, episode 110, from Caleb, who says, "Hi, I like your show. I just wanted to say some things about Puerto Rico. For some reason, we don't consider ourselves Americans. We see ourselves as Puerto Ricans and the island as our country. I think for that reason, the U.S. flag was not too celebrated." And there's a comment about what the guest said on the show. Some of the best food is not found in big restaurants, but in smaller ones, some places around Piñones, Luisa, and Guavati Calle, where you can find the Ruta de Lecon, the route of the split roast pig. Lots of houses that have their pigs on spits and are so good. The beaches around San Juan aren't that good, but Loquillo is really nice. Warm, clear water, not too salty, and really clean. Down south, the beaches are better, and one of my favorite is Cabo Royo, called Boqueron, and they have villas there that you can rent and stay for the weekend. The observatory of Arecibo is not that awesome. I think it looks better in pictures than in person, but nearby is Camue, where there are some interesting caves that are much better. Gary from Everything Everywhere was there once. Ponce has a very old fire station that is nice to see. Culebra and Vieques are a must. I think you can either fly or take the ferry to both. I think the best beaches in the entire area are Culebra. Playa Flamenco is really nice, but you will really need Spanish after San Juan. English is not that well known. I did learn it when I moved to Cleveland, Ohio. Back in the PR, I never used it, even though it is taught in the schools. Puerto Rico is very nice to visit and escape from the mainland, and it is totally different culture and history, and you don't need a passport. I love the show, Chris, and you're awesome and full of good info. Let me know if you ever need more info about Puerto Rico. And I would actually love to do another show about Puerto Rico. There's a couple different places that I'd like to go back to and do over again. Puerto Rico is one. I think Moscow has changed a lot. I'd like to do a show about that. And don't feel shy if you are the one who knows about some place to volunteer. With that, we're going to end this episode of The Amateur Traveler. If you have any feedback, feel free to leave a comment on the episode, as both Caleb and David did, or send me an email to host@amateurtraveler.com. You can also participate in the Facebook community, facebook.com/amateurtraveler, or follow me on Twitter @Chris2X. And as always, thanks so much for listening.